Hello, hi, my name is Lisa from SARSAS and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live. We're really pleased to be running this Facebook Live as part of our 16 Days of Activism programme, and we're going to be talking about lived experience and activism. So, massive issue, big thing that we've been noticing as a service is a real momentum of people getting involved in activism in this area. And today we're going to be talking to three amazing women who have been speaking up and out and using their lived experience to burst myths, to raise awareness, and ultimately to help create the change that you will want and need. So I was going to give them a big formal introduction, but actually they've been doing so many amazing things. I didn't think I would possibly remember it all. So I'll let them introduce themselves. So if you could tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, what sort of activism you've been doing, that would be amazing. If we start with Mel, that's okay.
Hello, I thank you for asking me to be with you here tonight. Yes, my name's Mel Darban. Yes, I'm a survivor of abuse and I've been very much helped by SARSAS. Now, the work that I've been doing, it very much started because of SARSAS. To begin with, my voice was very small, but that's exactly how it should be, I realized, and it's tiny steps. And from that, I've sort of built up my confidence and momentum, but with the help of a lot of wonderful people around me. I mean, to begin with, simply what I was doing was helping raise awareness of the work that SARSAS does. I help them with the development of their new website and reaching out to other survivors. Then I just thought, I really want to do a bit more. I want to give back more, and that's a very personal thing. And for me, education is where that sort of started, because I really felt strongly that without understanding the repercussions of sexual abuse, you can't make change. Now, I'll have to go back just a tiny bit. I won't deviate, but as a child, I very much lived in a fantasy world and I wrote stories to escape. That's how I got through what was happening to me. It's how I survived. And it occurred to me that I really realized that stories and books are a very powerful way to educate young people. Fiction opens up worlds you could never understand otherwise, but it keeps it between the safe pages of a book, which is really important. And I think books can create strong foundations for adulthood. Now, I do actually write now. I am an author, but I also go into schools and I do creative writing workshops, and these have proved incredibly valuable. I mean, through stories, I can explore subjects that are really, really difficult to tackle, but really need to be discussed. I mean, my next book, it's a young adult book that comes out, actually tells my story. SARSAS have given me the confidence to be able to do this. But of course, it's in a fictional setting. So hopefully it's non-threatening. And what I really, really hope is it opens up important discussion and empowers young people to speak out. And I think most important to me is that books show you that you're not alone and they can help find solutions to help you move forwards. I mean, I'm very lucky that I can do this and that everything that happened to me as a child is actually, I've been able to turn it into something good and positive, but it did start very small. It was tiny steps and building it up slowly and not putting pressure on yourself to do so. But if I can help, that would be amazing.
Brilliant, thank you, Mel. And Carol, can you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Carol Brooks, and I've been involved with speaking out for quite a while now, and I was involved in the SARSAS Civilian Sexual Abuse Research Project. I've been on the board of quite a few different projects and research, and I'm still today involved in Restorative Justice Scotland, and they want to launch an initiative that includes restorative justice for the whole family, because they're very aware that whole families can be damaged by the trauma of child sexual abuse. So how did I get into this? It was a slow drip really. I started off in a different life, a different job, being absolutely petrified of public speaking, and I mean really petrified. And in order to overcome that, because I needed to do public speaking for my job, I went on a public speaking training course, and I realised that I was pretty good at it and I quite enjoyed doing it. And I thought, well, now I've got this voice, I want to use it for something that really, really is important to me. And so I started doing speaking opportunities, but it was always not about me personally, it was about the cause in general. And I was given the opportunity to speak at Ignite Bristol, and that was before I was married. That was when I was Carol Jackson, and it's still on YouTube, and I'm still very, very proud of it. It's the first time I spoke about child abuse, and it was about what I find. I've always found that, how come we don't talk about this? How come we don't? Why isn't this the number 1 priority for everybody? Because if we don't look after our children, then what's a society? So I made the talk about children that are murdered by people that know the children, as opposed to stranger danger. And I had people afterwards, it was only a 6-minute talk, but afterwards I had people queuing up to speak to me, congratulate me, because it was so powerful for them. So it was an audience of 250 people, and it was really quite incredible, because you've got spotlights on you and you can't see the audience. So it's really like talking to a black wall, really. But anyway, I had people queuing up, and that really, I thought that was the proudest moment of my life, particularly I think with sufferers of child abuse. I mean, I'd suffered child abuse, but then I had domestic abuse and other forms of abuse. So I'd always suffered from low self-esteem. And for me to do something like that and have people queuing up to want to thank me, it was just one of the most amazing moments of my life. And I just wanted to do more. So I started then doing small engagements and small rooms of people. And slowly, I started slipping in and I'm a survivor, and I had more people queuing up to pat me on the back and applaud me and say how impressed they were, and I suppose I just got more and more enjoyment about it. And while that was happening, I was getting less and less enjoyment from my day jobs. So I wanted to do it more and more, and now it's the only work I do. So I just think we can't emphasize enough how great it is once you start doing it, but it is little steps.
And it's that really that power of saying yes, isn't it, to those opportunities that came along. Thank you. And Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, thank you. Lovely to be here with you all this evening, and amazing hearing what Carol and Mel are doing. It's wonderful. Well, my sort of I don't know, activism sort of I think it started when well, I was diagnosed with autism 10 years ago, and from that point I started really learning about who I was and understanding what this all meant for me. And as part of that process, I had counselling, and that was incredibly powerful, because it was then that I was very validated and believed by my counsellor. And from then I was able to then go and report my experiences of rape and abuse, which had happened when I was younger. So this is quite a few years since it happened. I was able to report it. And then from there I was directed towards SARSAS. I had amazing support with, particularly because they have an autism and learning disabilities sort of like speciality, sort of support team. That was amazing. So, like our other two ladies here, I wanted to give something back. As part of this journey, I'd already started being involved in academic research study design for autistic people, and I don't know, it just sort of exploded really. I've ended up I'm involved in 2 study groups who are looking at autistic experiences of sexual violence. There is so little empirical data to date so far that actually these are incredibly groundbreaking studies, because the idea is to sort of like find out what the experiences are, if there are any differences, and hopefully then the findings will then influence support for other victim survivors who are autistic or neurodivergent. The only real sort of like information we have to date from a very small sample study is it suggested an absolutely horrific figure of 79 to 80% of autistic women will have experienced rape, not just on one occasion, possibly many occasions, and that is horrific. So alongside the other research studies I'm involved in to do with autism, I am really focusing on sexual domestic abuse for autistic people, because it is so awful. I mean, it's awful, full stop. The figures are awful across the board, full stop, but they are particularly appalling for people who are disabled or who are neurodivergent, for many reasons, which I won't go into now because we haven't got too long. So I volunteer for SALSAS. I'm on the helpline. I'm also currently training with them to be a peer group facilitator, which is astonishing and completely out of my comfort zone, really. I'm on their autism and learning disabilities advisory group. I've done some training for SALSAS, the workshop I did with Georgie, which was just brilliant, so much fun, and just really good to be able to sort of like share I don't know, maybe the differences that an autistic experience may bring to the mix, and so how survivors need to be treated. Our responses to trauma are quite different. And with that in mind, I'm really hoping to get together with SALSAS and whoever to cobble together some, sorry, that's the wrong phrase, not cobble together, produce really, hopefully really help training for neurodiversity.
You're like, I'll just cobble together some academic.
Yeah, no, that sounds really dismissive. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. But alongside all of this stuff, oh gosh, there's I think Carol said it's and Mel as well. It's baby steps. I'd never thought I'd be doing all this stuff. I've just co-written a book, which is out in spring. Not trying to advertise it, but within that book, because it's about autistic relationships across the lifespan, inevitably there's a lot of information in there about these kind of appalling experiences from lived experience and sort of the studies that are being done to help alleviate these. So it's just incredible how all this stuff has just snowballed, really.
Because I think you've kind of set me up for the next question, which is very kind of you. But thank you all. It shows some really amazing options and some amazing routes. We have an author, we have a speaker, we have an academic. Also, we have someone who's a volunteer. And so we've got a lot of different routes that people can take. But what do they say? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step or something like that. I bet someone in this room knows exactly what that quote's meant to be. I was thinking, holy. But I'd love to know you've all gone so far and you're all doing such amazing things and making real difference. But where did that first step begin? What was it that really kind of helped you make that decision? And actually, this is something I need to start doing. I don't know who fancies going first.
Well, I don't mind if you want to go round again, and I really don't mind. The decision really did come after having had some sort of counselling with SARSAS, and it was amazing how it kind of gave me back the beginnings of me and who I might have been or be, or who I wanted to be. And I think all my life I'd felt full of shame, terror, guilt, alone, desperately alone. And all of it was really destructive, really self-destructive and destructive for other people, I realize. And I just suddenly desperately wanted to help other people deal with trauma like this, because I wanted to give them the hope that I'd been given. And hope is hugely powerful. And having been silenced all my life, I suddenly couldn't bear to think of other women never being free or not having that hope. I thought, if I can just be a tiny drop in the ocean of starting that for them, then that would be amazing. I want them to have a voice and not feel so totally alone, because being alone is something that I seem to have found a lot of people feel. You're always on the outside looking in. You never feel quite part of everyone else's lives. And I sort of felt that my abusers, they took away my life from a tiny age. I was only 4 when it started. SARSAS have given it back to me and are giving it back to me. And I want to help give someone else that chance to be free. And that's driving me. And it's so important and means so much to me. And I know I am literally one tiny minuscule voice, but all our voices together will add up to this one big thing, and we're fighting back, and that feels brilliant.
I don't know, Mel, your voice is feeling pretty big right now. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Wonderful. What a beautiful way to say that. And it really kind of, it brings it home. Quite often I go out and I do training, and I talk to people about things like, people are always asking about things like false accusations and things like that. And I tell them time and time again that actually the majority of people who speak out for other people. They speak out because they want to look after people. They speak out because actually a sense of duty and care, and that should be celebrated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We could just get stuck in a thank you loop, couldn't we? Carol, can you tell us a little bit about how you made that decision to actually, enough is enough and I must be heard?
I think my story is a little bit unusual in the sense that I left the country. I moved away from my family, and when I was 16, and I got myself into a right pickle, and I ended up being raped a few times. I didn't have the toolkit to cope with male attention and normal situations, because I suppose from child sexual abuse, I'd sort of come to the conclusion that other people could use my body as they wanted to, and then later on in my life, involved in an abusive relationship. So I'd frequently spoken about it, but it wasn't broadcast, and it was very measured who I told. I told sexual partners because I think it's blatantly obvious that I'm traumatized. But I think the thing that I describe in the Opening Doors video that was used for the Sibling Sexual Abuse Research Project, which is I'm so amazed. It's on YouTube, and it gets so many people looking at it and disclosing for the first time that, oh my goodness, thank goodness it's out there. And so I think it's another one of my proudest moments, that video. But one of the things I say in it is, for so many years I felt gagged and literally and could not speak, silenced, and also one of the most painful things was silenced by my own family. It's not being recognized. So I haven't had a burning desire to help other people. That's I've always known I could never be a therapist. Thank goodness there's amazing therapists out there, because golly, have I been in therapy for years and years to to be where I am today. Yeah, thank goodness I've had support of therapists along the way. But I've wanted to speak out for the horrible, what I call gangrene. I think sexual abuse damages so many people, and the damage it causes goes way beyond what we imagine. And the other thing I've wanted to do is I've wanted to end it. I've wanted it to stop. So I've wanted to be part of somehow getting it into people's heads and politicians and policy change. I think it should be, so in people's, minds of how dangerous, horrible, damaging this is. I mean, one of the things I talked about in the Ignite Bristol talk was that the fact that 1.4 children a week are murdered at hands of an adult they trust. I mean, I think if that was another cause, if that was like baby food killing a child a week, that the baby food would be banned. But because this is people who care for the child, we think, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it, so we won't even try. I think it's appalling. I think we have to change the way we look at abuse.
Yeah, I think it's a scandal that it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind when I think of the reality of this is happening right now. There will be people who live in your street, who are in your community, who are not safe in their own homes, children who aren't safe in their own homes. So I know that you said you're not driven by a burning desire to help people, but you're driven by a burning desire to help everybody. Because fighting sexual abuse, fighting any form of sexual violence, that is helping everybody.
But one thing I feel about it is that we think we live in a civilized country, right? And if this is the reality of a civilized country, I mean, we're not very civilized, are we, really? So,
and it takes guts to be the person that holds that mirror up and that tells people uncomfortable truths. So thank you.
But now the gag is removed, I find it more difficult actually to shut up. So I want to talk about it all the time. Not great at cocktail parties, so I'll shut up now.
I think everyone in the room probably has that same problem. Thank you. Sarah, tell us a little bit about how you made the decision to start talking to people about your experiences.
Well, I had already spoken to my really rather lovely second husband about this, and he's always been extraordinarily supportive, and believed me, she's very powerful. But similar to Carol, I wasn't believed by my family and was called a liar. In fact, I think I was called a fucking whore, actually, I think was the actual phrase. But there we are. Sorry, I've just sworn, haven't I? I just feel like it was a Davina McCall moment in Channel 4.
We're not on the beat, but that's what got said. And actually, sometimes the things that we hear are not easy.
No. Anyway, so after I was diagnosed with autism, I did go on this journey. I had counselling, and I found it to be so extraordinarily validating, and that these experiences I'd had over several occasions, many occasions actually, and over a long period of time, that I was believed. And I started to write a bit, actually. I wrote an article about it, which it was then published in an organisation by an organisation called The Mighty. And then I reported it to the police. And I knew it wouldn't go anywhere, and that wasn't my intention. My intention was not to go to court with this, but it was just to get it reported for the record. It done no good anyway, because one of the perpetrators was dead. So what can you do with that? But it was extraordinarily powerful. Well, I think the most powerful thing actually was being believed, and then learning to believe myself, because I think I had internalized a lot of the belief that I was a liar. I think that because I've been called a liar and not listened to and not believed, I then believed that I was in fact a liar, you know, and some of this is, you know, related to my neurodivergence because and the period in which I was brought up as well, actually. So I think not really very much understood about it at the time. And I was a very compliant little people pleaser. I didn't really understand how people worked. But I didn't understand why I didn't understand, if that makes sense. And I was raised in a family which was very extraordinarily patriarchal, and women were there to please men, basically. And so I was very easily coerced. Now, this is something I feel quite strongly about, because there is a myth, particularly with autistic and neurodivergent survivors, that somehow because we communicate and behave maybe atypically or differently to a lot of people, therefore, because of our autism, it's therefore our fault if we get raped. The myth is that, oh, well, you get yourself in those situations because you can't read social cues. So that's an extra layer of victim blaming on top of the women shouldn't wear things like that, or God forbid, go out for a drink and have some fun. You know, there's that extra layer of victim blaming. And I think it's really, really important to turn that narrative on its head, is that it is always the perpetrator's fault. Always. They choose to abuse. They choose to manipulate, and they choose to take advantage. And I never think that the phrase "take advantage" is strong enough. It's too much. It's too weak. It is an absolute violent violation of someone's being, their whole being, because it's not just a physical thing. It affects every part of you. Yeah. I think one of either Carol or Mel was talking about lack of self-esteem. Well, absolutely, for sure, lack of self-esteem. It takes away your ability to trust yourself on any level, any kind of decision making. And if you're already in a fairly traumatized situation by growing up in a world which is not designed for you, and also if you don't have a supportive family or carers or whatever, then, you know, it's a real, I don't know, perfect storm, if you like. There's so many terrible things. It really is. It's almost like, yeah. No,
sorry. I think a lot of people who are watching this will really resonate with them. That feeling that all three of you have mentioned of being silenced, of the trauma, of those barriers, that internalized shame, that internalized blame.
Yeah.
It's very effective, as Carol, you were saying. It's a gag, isn't it?
Yeah.
People might not be able to see it. And they might not see that someone is in trauma. Sarah, you were talking about the people pleasing. So all these kind of things that might make it really, really, really hard to reach out to the people who are in your support networks, or to reach out to friends or colleagues, but then to take it that step beyond and to actually step up and make your voices heard, to do things like Facebook Lives, to do things like make videos for SARSAS, for the GSK video mail, to put yourself forward to do academic research, to kind of do a talk or Ignite. I mean, these are some amazingly massive steps. These are massive steps for anybody to take, but let alone for someone to take who is carrying something that they've been told they can never talk about, to find that strength. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I think that's something to be really, I know, Carol, you mentioned being so proud. Yep.
Yeah, I think we live in a very, I don't know, in my lifetime, a certainly unique time, because we now have lived experience advisors, lived experience consultants. I mean, we're now made to feel actually proud of what for so many years we were ashamed of. So I think it's the perfect time to be doing activism.
I think that's a really, really good observation. I think, and I don't know if you're all feeling this in your gut as well. It feels like something is happening. It feels like there's a movement. It feels like there's momentum. It feels like change could happen. Is that your sense as well?
Mm. Yes,
Yes and
absolutely.
no.
Mm.
Sorry, Mo, you were going to say something.
No, I was just saying, no, I totally agree with you. I have noticed a shift. I really have. And I mean, I'm a grandparent, so I'm a certain generation that I'm in. So in fact, nothing was ever said or talked about or admitted or done, especially when I was a child. It just wasn't. I was lying, I was silenced. It was awful, and that's zipped up, and that's how I stayed. And it just feels brilliant. I've actually just been part of a sort of art therapy group that SARSAS do, and I was by far the oldest. But it was wonderful to be with all those young people there who are so much more willing to speak up, speak out, and say, hey, you know, I'm not having this, I will talk about it, and I want you to listen. And that is fantastic. And I can really feel it now and see it. And you're right, it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I agree from that point of view, Mel. I do think that, you know, I'm going to say something to big up the youth here, right? Because it really annoys me when young people are called snowflakes and they are derided for having actually extraordinary levels of emotional intelligence, actually, you know. I think this is something, you know, us older ones can really, really learn from, you know. And I would like to put a plea out there to anybody who's older and has experienced anything like rape, sexual abuse, anything of that, you know, anything like that in your younger years. I would say it is never too late to get support and help. If you want to, obviously it's entirely, you know, it's everybody's decision what they choose to do. SARSAS will never say to a victim survivor that you have to report it. SARSAS will always support you to do what is right for you, and that is so important to know. Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to be believed or supported, and as I said earlier, you know, I had this really sort of like quite well developed internalized belief that yes, I was a liar because the grown-ups had said I was. You know,
I love that, Sarah, about the youth. And actually, what you said about emotional intelligence, I think that's a really good observation, because I go out and I do training in schools and I talk to young people about consent, and people, when I tell them about this, like, oh, that must be really difficult. And there is always a small minority of people who are quite challenging, who have some, you know, slightly difficult opinions, but there's always more people that have a really keenly developed sense of what is right and what is wrong and what their rights are and what they should and should not expect put up with. I feel
it's really powerful. The thing I do that really worries me is, because I do agree with what you lovely ladies have said, but I do think that there is a massive pushback, particularly online, to not believe survivors, particularly survivors who are women. We've all seen sort of like the kind of backlash that happened with high profile cases, and there are some really horrible and very frequent comments that get thrown back at people. And I do find this quite worrying that, you know, the rape culture is still alive and kicking, sadly. So it's like even though there are good signs, we have to keep going with the work.
I wanted to say, I think it depends on the platform, because one of the experiences I've got is that the Sibling Sexual Abuse Research Project, for example, changed the world of sibling sexual abuse. Before that research project, you Googled sibling sexual abuse, there was nothing. Now, and there are now groups on Facebook and Instagram where people disclose for the first time, and it's a safe environment. So I think there are now, I mean, I look at it with envy a lot of the time, because I think if I'd have had this when I was young, you know, so I think the youth have more opportunities to disclose. There are more platforms, there are more ways. Well, for a start off, there's so much more information, you know, all the blogs and websites, and so I think it depends where you go and disclose. So I think there are ways where you can do it anonymously, there are ways you can do it publicly, there are so many ways that we can be active and vocal.
I think that's
up to us to choose.
That's a really good tip, actually, for people who are thinking about, actually, I would like to go out and talk to people about my experiences. Pick your platform.
Absolutely. There are some that will do completely anonymous. They'll even do acting. I mean, some of the disclosures, conversations, activism I've done it with people who want to be anonymous, whereas I'm quite happy being public. I've got articles in books, in magazines. I've been interviewed by somebody in Germany who wants me to go on German TV. I've done, so that there are so many different ways you can do it. I think actually, in a way, world's your oyster at the moment.
I really like that as well. It's about knowing that you can do as much or as little as you want, and actually that the power resides with you. You don't have to compromise. If you're someone that doesn't want to have your name out there, you don't need to compromise and be pushed into it. If you're someone who doesn't want your face shown because maybe it doesn't feel safe for you at this current time, the power resides with you. You don't have to do things you don't want to do. I think when I first started working at SARSAS 10 years ago, things were slightly different. And whenever we put any media story out, or maybe if there was a big story in the media about sexual violence, we'd always have journalists calling up going, can we have a victim? Can we have a victim? Can we have a victim? It felt on the verge of kind of exploitative, like wheel out the victim. But now I think we're at a point where there's an understanding that there will be an expectation that people will be treated in a way that is respectful and caring, and that actually their opinion about how their story is interacted with matters. And we as a service are getting better at supporting people to be platformed, whereas once upon a time we were a bit nervous about it, if I'm honest. We were nervous that we would be exploiting people, putting people in difficult positions. And then one day we realized actually that's kind of patriarchal, because, I mean, you know, look at you guys, you are all intelligent women who are able to make your own decisions. It was, you know, it's not appropriate for us to tell you or to not give you the opportunity to decide whether or not it's something you're interested in. Thinking about that first time that you started to do these engagements, how did it feel in the run-up, and then what was it like after?
Oh, that's a good one.
It is a good one.
Shall I go?
Oh yeah, Carol, go.
I remember when I spoke on BBC Radio Somerset. So that was my first live. No, sorry, it was recorded. Radio interview. It was just the radio host, the show host, and myself. And I hardly slept the night before. My husband drove because I mean I've got IBS, and I must have needed the toilet about 10 times driving along the motorway. My stomach was doing the hula hoops, you know. I was very, very nervous, and it was fine. When I got there, as soon as I met the guy who was interviewing me, that was it. I stopped being nervous. My hands stopped sweating, but it was the unknown. Once I was in the studio with him, it was like having a conversation, because it was just him and me. I couldn't see the audience. It was so yeah, it was just a conversation. And now I've done so many that I'm not ill afterwards. I don't need to rest afterwards. But yeah, in the beginning, I would have had to have gone for a walk, or I couldn't have done an interview, for example, at this time of day, because this would have been too late for me to unwind before going to sleep. So I had to be really careful at what time of day and set up for there being an unwind time. And one of the things that works well for me is a really good film, because then I'm not in my head, I'm really distracted. But yes, I had to really prepare the self-care and really look after that. I'm a terrible migraine sufferer. I really get a lot of, I'm chronic migraine sufferer. And I would have been, you know, if I didn't do proper self-care after an interview, I would have been in bed for days. And that's the price I had to pay for doing it initially. Now, not at all. I practically don't even need to do much self-care at all. The only time I really get rumbled is if somebody asks me a difficult question. And I don't mean a difficult question that I don't want to answer, because there's nothing really about any of the different forms of abuse that I don't want to talk about. It's that if I find there's something accusatory in their question, like, so why didn't you tell him to stop? You know, if I get asked something like that, then, ooh, my blood boils. But so then the nerves have got less and less and less and less and less. And the necessity for self-care has got less and less and less. It's become more normal.
Brilliant. Oh, well done. I remember I did my first radio interview for Salsa's. I got things slightly wrong and burst into tears after. So much you're putting it together much better. Mel, how was your first experience and what did you feel like after?
Well, I have to admit, yes, I was absolutely terrified. I think what was worrying me more than anything is I thought I'd fall apart, and my whole life I was holding on to not falling apart. I thought if I did, I'd never get back up again, and that terrified me. And I didn't think I'd be believed. I didn't think anyone would understand, and it all felt incredibly triggering. And I started then to feel full of sort of shame again and guilt. It's all my fault that I'm feeling like this. And then I thought, well, you're just going to end up even more lonely if you say anything, even though I actually knew that this wasn't true now. But it was a really huge step to take. But then I found, I mean, I wanted to do it though. I really wanted to. I wanted to stand up and be counted for once and say what I wanted to say. And all I can say that is after I'd done it, and my first thing that I did was to tell a friend, because I'd never told anyone. That was my first step. I'll tell you about the schools in a minute, but I was empowered. I was just completely empowered. And also I saw that it's okay to fall apart. It's okay to be vulnerable, because this speaks to other people. And I thought to myself, you know what, being vulnerable is so much more powerful than me being strong or putting on a brave face. And people empathize with that, and it opened up doors to talk, and that's what is important. It's dialogue, it's talking. Because I'm an author and I write for young people, teenagers, basically, I go into schools and I do my creative writing with that age group. I think I was more terrified being with them as well, thinking, what are they going to think? How am I going to do this or ever talk about anything? How am I going to raise these subjects, even though I can use my book? But you know, I have such hope for the future. These young people are just incredible, and they're so brave, they're so courageous and honest. And by this important thing you mentioned about platforms and finding the right one is exactly it, because by giving them a character they could be, these young people were so willing to open up and tell their stories. It was obvious, quite obvious, because then open discussion, it was their stories through a character. And I thought, if you can be brave enough to do this and it's empowering you, then this is becoming even more important than I thought. So all those feelings of terror, and I still get incredibly nervous and feel a bit sick, and I don't want to do this, but it's worth every bit of that, because the feeling afterwards is, yes, empowerment. It is brilliant, and it's wonderful to do that if you can, if you have that opportunity. If you can't, that doesn't matter either. It doesn't matter at all. But I've been lucky that I was able to find my voice and be helped to have a voice as well, and, you know, pass it on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And Sarah, what were your thoughts? How did it feel before and how did it feel after?
Well, I can echo Carol and Mel's experiences here. I think one of the things I really did before all these, before all these different things, I just give myself a lot of positive self-talk. You know, I'm not a liar.
Mm.
And I think over the few years, like since I've been doing all this stuff, I'm really feisty now. I never used to be, not really. The whole sense of people pleasing has gone in the bin where it belongs, frankly. And I'm not afraid to speak truth to power.
Mm.
I try not to get involved in Twitter spats because nobody goes on social media to have their opinions changed. And I just think, you know what? Take your incel culture somewhere else. Thank you. You know, so but it is scary, actually. I mean, I've got an interview coming up with, I think it's BBC South, for one of another study that's being proposed at the moment, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's always really scary. I do worry how I come across, because I do communicate a bit differently to some people because of my autism and everything, and I think that's fine. But what concerns me sometimes is that the actual points I'm trying to make are coming across coherently, because believe it or not, there are days when I can't talk, or there are days I get really overwhelmed. I know you're like, really? But it's true. It's absolutely true. And I either shut down or melt down, and I can't actually function. So with regards to self-care, and I've had ME for like 24 years now, as well. So I always have to sort of like build in recovery time, and it's often days actually after doing anything, and that's, you know, that's my normal. And that's okay, because as the other ladies have said, it's absolutely worth doing. It's given this, as well as all the other research stuff and other things that I do, it has given me such a sense of purpose. And it really has.
And you really are changing the world. Every single study, every single interview. I mean,
So.
and you're coming across coherent and crystal clear for me, which is,
well, that's good, isn't it? Can't always guarantee it.
Carol,
But,
you got
Yeah, I spoke about what it was like before, but not after. And I'd like to add that I think I feel euphoric. I feel the sense of elation and such a sense of achievement. And one thing I think is absolutely fundamentally different between doing this kind of work and all the other jobs I've done before is that this is authentic. This is from my heart, and every other job I've ever done has been, in comparison, very superficial. This is so real that the benefit I get from it is 1,000,000 times more than any other job I've ever done. So
I love that as a word for it. Authentic. That is a really good, clear and powerful word for what you're describing for all three of you.
Yeah, you know, it's odd you saying that, Carol, because it's, you know, when you say that, I thought, oh yeah, that's exactly what being on the helpline is like. I can sometimes, you know, turn up on a whichever day I'm doing, and just think, have I got the spoons to do this today? By the end of it, yeah, you've spoken to maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, well, more people, and it's made a difference to their day. You know, sometimes in a, you know, not necessarily a very noticeable way, and in others, I mean, absolutely, you know, I mean, I don't want to, obviously can't talk about the actual situations and everything, but I always leave thinking, yeah, that was really worth it. It feels like a privilege, actually.
I'm aware we're kind of starting to run out of time. I want to get a few more things in, but I feel like we could probably talk about this for several hours, not just one. You've all started to allude to the idea of how you prepare and how you take care of yourself. You know, activism is hard and there's a lot of burnout in the activist community. Trying to stand on a point and move the world, so to speak, it can be quite exhausting. So what would your advice be for people who are thinking about activism? How do you keep yourself well? How do you keep yourself safe whilst you're doing this? We'll start off with Mel, we'll go around again.
To someone who's thinking about talking about their sort of trauma and their experiences, I think first of all, I'd say definitely take it one step at a time. Be kind to yourself. It doesn't all have to be done at once, and it's fine if you don't do it at all and you can't. Be sure you want to and that you're ready to do that. As it can be painful, it can be triggering, but know that it will empower you. And also that how you thought people might react just won't be true. You might help someone perhaps who's been silenced for years. I think also what's really important is that what we're doing is we'll be helping people who feel helpless and unable to help themselves, because actually what we're going to pass on is those people who haven't been abused. I think it's just as important for them to understand as it is for the people to feel supportive who have been abused. You're giving them the means to start their own journey of understanding, and then change can begin. So it's very easy sometimes for me to always think about what happened to me, how this has affected my life. But also all the people around me need to also understand why they want to also be empowered to help. And it's trying to sort of, for me, was to take on the bigger picture. I mean, obviously it's a very personal thing. And I think also while you're doing this too, you do have to look after yourself. I've never been any good at that at all. And I'm always the sort of last person that I'll think about, but it's really important to learn to stop. I never did. Please do look after yourselves. I mean, what I do is I love reading because I can escape into a different world. I love nature. It is very grounding. I never just did something for me, and I've realized, don't be afraid to say no. I have never said no, but I'm learning to, because of course it's not selfish to say no. It's, you know, it's just so important, because I've now understand I'm not there to make everyone else's life happy. I've been a people pleaser. It's the way I've got through life, but you don't have to do that. You know, we're not here to make everyone else better, but it all works together as a whole, you know.
I love that. It's being that part of that wider community, and actually all these actions improves it for everyone. Well, improves it for everyone other than perpetrators, but we quite like the idea of it not being improved for them. And Carol, can you talk to me a little bit about how do you keep yourself well and safe in this activism work?
I think one of the first things I have learned to do is notice. And I mean, notice how I'm feeling. Notice if my shoulders are really tense, or because you know, Mel just said, when you're used to prioritizing the family or the perpetrator, the abuser, whoever it is, we have to really squash our feelings, our emotions, and our needs. And therefore to actually learn to, first of all, recognize them. And I remember with the therapist, I said, you know, one of my goals was to learn to identify my needs, voice them, and then stand by them, because it was so novel to me. It was everybody else's needs were first. And so to actually notice how I'm feeling is the first step. Are my hands sweating? Am I tired? Do I need to go and lie down? Understanding what that need is. I mean, I've had eating disorders for most of my life, and one of my go-tos is either binge or starve. So do I need something to eat? Do I need a cup of coffee? Do I need to pick me up, or do I need to sit down? So I think being active is very, very important. So it could be, an instinct might be, oh, I want to curl up with a blanket, but sometimes it doesn't get it out, and it's the energy and the tension and the thoughts have got to come out. So I feel better if I push myself to then go for a walk or go for a swim or do something to actually be physically active. And I think the other really, really important thing for me is to connect. So connect with someone, to share with someone, to have either someone with me, whether it's, my husband who came to the radio interview, or I've told a friend that I'm going, and then the friend says, hey, how did it go? So that we can get a bit off our chest and share it with someone. And that sharing makes it even more wonderful. And so, active, notice and connect are real 3 important things that I do.
I love that. We don't need to be a one-woman crusader. Actually, we're part of that community, and we don't need to sacrifice ourselves for the cause. We need to kind of keep looking after ourselves. I think that's really, really sage advice. And Sarah, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much similar to the Carol and Mel's. I think the thing I would say is that self-care and self-compassion are different for everybody. What works for one person really doesn't work for everybody. One size does not fit all. So for example, a lot of autistic people struggle with identifying their emotions, which is very different to saying that autistic people don't have emotions. So that is another myth. It's called alexithymia. And so actually, doing work on yourself, whether it's body work or, somatic work, whatever, to actually work out what's your feeling, and, identifying those feelings and your needs is really, really important. And being able to learn to express what your needs are, to vocalize them if that's how you communicate, or, to say to the people you're close to, I'm feeling like this, I probably need to do that. Now, for me, the connection for me is often I need to connect with myself rather than necessarily other people, even though I need a bit of both. And it just completely depends on how I'm feeling. So it's kind of like, I don't know, the sort of, I think it's what Carol's saying about sort of like noticing your triggers, noticing what's affected you, because and it depends entirely on how you're feeling on the day anyway, that possibly something might be said, or I don't know, something would come up in the conversation that wouldn't necessarily affect you on one day, but on another it may well do. And so therefore the self-care afterwards may be different as well. So I've am learning, will probably always be learning, that I need to sort of like look after myself in different ways, depending on a variety of factors, really. If I'm really exhausted, I'll just cut myself off for a good old afternoon nap. Love a nap, frankly. Sometimes I will go out with a friend, or sometimes I'll say to my husband, gosh, that was tough, because I know with SALSAS on the helpline, this is something really helpful, is that we finish our session, and there's always a sort of like a debrief. So it's kind of like, how are you doing? And what are you going to be doing now to help you to sort of transition, I guess, from this to the rest of your day. And I think that's really, really helpful.
I think so. Also, I'm pro naps. That's always good advice. Something I would also say is, if anyone is thinking about engaging with activism, doing media engagements, and doing bits of consultancy work for your local support centres, anything like that, you can always cancel if today isn't the day for something. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I think it can feel like people are beholden to the calls or to what they've said that they will do, but your well-being is always priority.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
going to share our details with people?
Oh,
Because I was thinking if somebody's got questions, I'm very happy for somebody to contact me and ask me.
We probably won't share any personal details, but what we are doing is we're putting. So if anyone wants to find out more about the things we've been talking about today and the things that Mel, Sarah, and Carol have been up to, like all the amazing work they've been doing, there'll be loads of links in the comments section. Our tech support, Lisa D, is currently popping links in there as we speak. We're coming up to time, I'm aware, which just feels like it's just gone in a blink of an eye. I think what would be great is we probably need to start finishing up. So I would love us to finish with, if there is someone who is listening or watching this now, or when we put it on YouTube later, what would be the one takeaway message we would all like them to have from this? Big question. I don't know if anyone feels like they've got something that's just fantastic. Carol, can you start us off, please?
Focus on the benefits.
Yes, focus on, because actually, and those have come across really loud and clear from everyone today. We focus on the barriers, but actually there are loads of really worthwhile and rewarding reasons to get involved.
I think also that perhaps that what we could all take from this and what we're striving for, and it's really positive, is that we are being not just listened to but heard, and this is what we want to happen, to spread out, that we're not just listened to, but I think it's really important, but we are heard. I got fed up with being listened to and dismissed, and I think as women, and especially as abuse victims, we have been dismissed. I want us to be really heard, and then change will come. And until that happens, change doesn't. But I think, as you said earlier, Lisa, that movement is happening and we are being heard.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mel. And Sarah, what would be your final thought?
Well, I guess, yeah, the work I do is I would really like to see a spotlight on disabled and neurodivergent experiences of sexual abuse, rape, sexual violence, domestic violence, and you know that all that the studies and the talking, everything sort of like feeds into far more trauma-informed, effective services for people who are wired differently and who accordingly need either adapted or different kinds of support. The numbers of folk who come forward for support does not marry up with the numbers we know are out there of disabled neurodivergent folk. So there are massive barriers still to people reaching out. So I would love to see that. I think that's the thing I would love to see, is that gap reduced to nothing, so that we don't need us anymore.
Right.
You know? I'd like to be out of a job, basically, because that's the ideal, isn't it? That society changes so much that they don't need us anymore.
Brilliant. I'm here for that. Oh,
100%.
I want to say thank you all so much for your time today. It's really, really appreciated. And Lisa D, who's doing our tech, has said that there's some really lovely comments. So, which doesn't surprise me, because I think there will be a lot of people who will this will really resonate with them and really inspire a lot of people to maybe start their own activist journey. So I think that's all we've got time for today. So thank you to everyone who is watching and who has joined us. And thank you so much to Mel, Sarah, and Carol for your time.
Yeah.
Oh, and the last thing I would also say is we are currently doing our big fundraiser of the year, the Big Give, and we'll put a link to that in the comments as well. It's our annual fundraiser where all of your donations are doubled. So, and that finishes tomorrow. So very exciting. That's for our helpline this year. So thank you all very much. And Lisa, if you can close us out, that's us done for the night.